General of India, Mr. Anish Rajan, Director Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, respected Mr. Satyendranath Raghunandan Maharaj, Madam Ila Gandhi, MEC Mr. Ravi Pillai, Editor Post Newspaper, Mr. Akash Brahmdeo, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban, it gives me great honor to welcome you all to this evening's program. Today's program is Satya Vaarta, the talk on truth, in order to commemorate Mandela Day and Gandhi 150 celebrations. This evening, it is our privilege having Mr. Maharaj in our midst to share his life's journeys and experiences with us. I now request Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, to address us with his remarks.
Namaskar. Honorable Consul General Shri Anish Rajan ji, our respected Shri Satyendranath Raghunandan Maharaj ji, MEC Ravi Pillai ji, Akash Brahmadev ji, Madam Ila Gandhi ji, Omi Singh ji, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You are seeing that this format is little bit different today, and we experienced this kind of program with Madam Ila Gandhi ji. This is Satya Vaarta. Satya Vaarta means talk on truth. But then what is truth? So whenever we are speaking many things, then we are feeling that this is only information and this is not truth. And sometimes informations are very clever in hiding truth. And sometimes when we are discussing something which are based on reality, that is also not able to reach to the truth. So today, our pray to the Almighty and our wish to the nature that we will be able to get the sense of that truth which is beyond information and reality. And we will have experience in which we can observe Mr. Maharaj's life as the experience of truth. Truth which was lived by the greater personalities like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi. Through their own experiences, they have created inspiration among the society, among the contemporary humanity, that how can we travel to the truth by encroaching the limitations of reality and informations, which are always giving us sense of greed and fear. But truth is beyond that. How they traveled beyond the greed and fear, how they encroached the limit of the foundations of greed and fear, how they get that kind of sense in which they live the life for the entirety, not for any individual or not for subjectivity. How they could become objective person, how they could become the person like sun who is giving energy by adding some atoms in it, not the destruction of atom. This is the process in science known as fusion. So it is not fission, it is fusion. So greater personalities are living the life like fusion, not fission. So they did live that kind of life in which they assimilated, they accepted everything which were looking adverse to them, which were looking against to them, which were challenging them, which were contesting them, which were opposing them, and which were making them able to lose their existence in terms of individuality. So they traveled in the journey of that kind of truth, and today we all are fortunate that we have a personality like Maharaj, who traveled the life of truth and who experienced the truth beyond the reality, beyond the information, and beyond the subjectivity, and also experienced objectivity in the life, and also experienced the inspiration of respected Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi. So this is a nice opportunity for us. I welcome all of you on behalf of Consul General of India, Durban, and Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center. You all are so kind to us. You are giving your cooperation, inviting our accepting our invitations, and giving us support in organizing these kind of events in which your attention and your participation in terms of listening is most valuable and important. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I welcome again all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your remarks. I now hand you over to our interviewer, Mr. Akash Brahmdeo, a well-known South African journalist and editor of the Post newspaper, to Satya Vaarta with Mr. Maharaj.
As the editor of Post. But my starting point today is that I am a human being sitting next to another human being who has lived an amazing life. And my aim with this particular conversation is to try and understand the life that he's lived, and in the process to try and learn from his experience. It is my hope that in our conversation, you too will learn. Mr. Maharaj, I want to start off by saying thank you very much, because time is a very precious commodity. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate in advance what you're going to share with us. I would like to focus not on Maharaj, the politician, but Maharaj, the person. And I want to start off, I want to take you back to what you remember as your earliest childhood memory.
My earliest childhood memory is of a family in which my father was disabled and therefore more chair-ridden than mobile, at 6'2" and 200 plus pounds in weight. And my mother, who was about 5'2", thin and wiry, who did all the work, both in the house and in the shop, and sold coal in the backyard, which she shoveled herself, and a garden which she tended to for our food, and a chicken run which also provided our eggs. And all of which was done on the basis that my dad was the boss.
Would you describe this childhood as a happy childhood?
I do not have any particular memories that make that childhood outstandingly happy, nor do I have memories that make it unhappy. What I know is that it was his family struggling to live. My brothers older than me, as soon as they finished school, which went in those years up to standard 6, became petrol pump attendants. And the rule was that every Friday they came with their pay envelope and handed it to my dad. My memory is that it was not an unhappy life, but it was a life in which I was the only matriculant when matric standard 10 was allowed in our school, and I was the first group of matriculants. But the first time I, in that class of 20, wore a long pants was after I had matriculated, whilst all the other boys were attending school with long pants.
Do you think your parents would be proud of what you've achieved?
They would have gone through, and perhaps they will still, if they were alive, go through different moments about me. They have, while they were alive, gone through periods when they were extremely proud of me. When I came first in class, they were extremely disappointed in me when they found out that I was drinking beer in the class. They thought, my dad thought, I was wasting time by playing football rather than helping in delivering goods that were bought in the shop. And there were times when I refused to go and learn to be a teacher and wanted to be a lawyer. And my dad said, no ways, no son of mine is going to be a liar, because lawyers are liars. And when they learned about my political involvement, my dad could not reconcile it with it. But after I got arrested, anybody who walked into the house was told the first thing, you know, my son is in prison and he's a communist. And if you tried to contradict him, be careful, his walking stick would be within range. So, their view about me will change from time to time. I don't know how they would see me today, but I do accept that even if they saw me today in a particular way, it would change tomorrow.
You are not a religious man. Is this contradictory to the way that you were brought up as a child?
No. I was taken to the temple with my grandmother. I must have been about 5 years old. And I rolled the tennis ball out into the backyard of the temple and ran away and played soccer in bare feet. And my grandmother went and reported to my dad about what I'd done. And he was seated crippled and he called me and he wanted to know what had happened. So I told him. And he said, you don't want to go to temple? I said, no. He called my mother. He would call her by English pet name. He said, Lily, look at what your son is doing. And he told me to go to her. And that was the end. I never went back to temple.
If you had to meet your mom today, what would you say to her?
Oh, my mom and I would get on like a house on fire. If she still had her hair that trailed right down to the floor, I would like to have the opportunity to plait it again, to anoint it with coconut oil, and then instead of a single plait, make it into 2 plaits and tie them together and use them as a horse's reins and say to her, giddy up, giddy up.
In some of your darkest days, did you fall back on the love that you knew your mother had for you to get you through?
My mom's love was a very sparse commodity. There was no time in the life she led except on those rare occasions when all was quiet at midday and she had gone out and bathed and washed her hair and was drying those long hairs in the sun. That was the time to have some fun. And Dad, if he heard us laughing, or Mom shouting at me, "Stop it," would shout, "What's happening?" And both of us would say, "Nothing. Nothing is happening." All fine. So, her love was not a demonstrative love. Her love was encapsulated in what I think characterizes all mothers. When I was taken back to Newcastle from Durban, when I had left home and was studying on my own, and they heard rumors that I was living as a student, but living by gambling and drinking and smoking, they took me home. And they called a meeting with my brothers and they wanted me to stay away. And of course I said, no, I'm not going to stay away. I'm going away. My mom came to me in the room and said, "Why are you doing this?" She said, "Look, I don't know you. I think you're crazy." And she says, "But don't quarrel with your dad. Don't disagree with him. Listen to him. Then tonight, the train passes through from Johannesburg to Durban at midnight. Jump out of the window and go and take the train." And she said, "Here is 20 pounds, which I have saved. Your father doesn't know about it." Secondly, she said, "I don't know when I'll see you again and I don't know what you'll do. But here is a ring. I would have liked life to go in such a way that I could select your wife. But I know that it won't happen. So whoever you marry, here's the ring. And it's a mark of my approval." That was what I think all mothers are. They would give their lives to make the life of their children. Sorry about you men. I don't think you are like that.
Do you have any regrets with regards to your mom?
Yes and no. Yes, because I would have liked that after I came out of prison and I was in exile, I would have had the opportunity to have her visit me. And when I had remarried in Zambia, but she died without being able to do that. Yes, because of the life that she led, but on the other hand, no. Because I think that is the life, that her life was not an unusual life for people in South Africa of those days. That is how most of the communities based on color had to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And that is how, in pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, be they Indian, African, or people of mixed blood such as colors, it was the women folk that were the bedrock. They held everything together. Yes, I know the men took the credit, but so, no regrets. A simple understanding that the only way we can honor their love is by trying to live your life according to the precept that Mandela captured. He said the reason why we win our freedom is in order to make freedom for others. That is what mothers lived for. They gave birth to somebody else so that you, the child, can make a difference to the lives of others.
Is this what drove you? Because you suffered immensely for the freedom that all South Africans enjoy today. Was that your driving force? the greater benefit of others?
I don't know at which stage that may have become a conscious thing. But certainly, looking at even the community in which I was born and grew up, I became acutely aware of how the system of race rule was making us fight each other, us black people. And by the time I reached university, I, who had played and was a passionate soccer player in Newcastle, even when I left after matric, I was registered in that club, in the adult club. But when I got to University of Natal, and I went to join the soccer club, I found it made up of Africans, colours, Muslims, Tamils, Hindi speaking, and I got a shock, Christians. A shock to my system, because in Newcastle, the soccer teams were Stella, Hindu, or Zones, Muslim, NIFC, Tamil. And when we played soccer, the players, our brothers and supporters were on the sidelines fighting each other to defend, fighting physically with knives. And so when I returned to Newcastle to take up a holiday job in July, the manager of my club came that night and said, "You're playing this Sunday." And that was my first act of cowardice. I couldn't tell him, this is not on. I didn't know how, because that was the mood and the prevailing atmosphere in my community. So I said, I've given up soccer. I gave up the thing I loved because I could not make a change.
Let's then explore this issue of identity. How do you see yourself? How do you describe yourself?
I was speaking to Dr. Yogi earlier, and I said to him that despite the diversity in India that he referred to, in my experience, limited experience of meeting people from India, if you would ask where you're from and who are you, the answer would be I'm an Indian. In South Africa, we still answer I'm an Indian, I'm an African. We don't start by saying I'm a South African. So when you talk about identity to me, and you ask me how do I see myself, I cannot remember seeing myself as anything else but a South African. That is why I have lost a lot of votes for the ANC. Because when we were legalized and we had the conference in 1961 in Durban, the journalist asked me, "What's your identity?" "You're an Indian." I said to him, "Listen, I don't speak an Indian language. I don't understand Indian music. My only affinity to Indians is that I like a plate of curry." When the Indian comrade in the ANC came to me, Momo, who is now Deputy Director General in Finance, he came to me and said, "Comrade, you've just lost us the Indian vote." So, yes, in that sense, I'm still in that melting pot that South Africa is. And I understand that what we achieved in 1994 was for the first time to create the situation where people in all their diversity in South Africa could now begin to build themselves as one nation with all their diversity.
I want to move a little bit forward because earlier today when we were talking to SG, and I mentioned to him that you are one of the pillars upon which our democracy has been built. And it's come at great sacrifice to you as an individual in your personal life. I want to take you back to your years in Robben Island.
And I will do that.
Yes.
Because there are a number of people here, I don't want to tell lies because this is supposed to be a truth session. And if I allowed you to get away with your introduction, they will tell me why I allowed you. Because I have quarreled with a number of colleagues here. I do not accept the word that I made a sacrifice. Don't accept it. I joined the struggle as a conscious thing, not as a career, not to make a living. And so whatever happened, the suffering that I underwent was not a sacrifice. The sacrifice was made by my loved ones, by my family, by my children, because they did not make that choice. So the suffering that they went under is the sacrifice.
Thank you for clarifying that. Those nights on Robben Island before you'd fall asleep, what were the thoughts that ran through your mind?
You must have heard the story. Told by Mandela, Katara, they've even written about it. That one day at the quarry, I was explaining to Katara and the comrades a huge debate that I had had the night before. And I was going through what one said and what the other said and how the debate went. At the end, Kathy said, but hey, we looked up in single cells. Who are you arguing with? I said, I'm arguing with myself. And that's a true story. What was my last thought? It depended on what was happening around us. It would change. But always there was a questioning, there was a debate. And sometimes that debate was like being in a courtroom facing a charge because I had done something that I now began to feel embarrassed about. But in that courtroom of your conscience at that time when you are alone and the charge sheet is read out by the prosecutor in your courtroom, the only witnesses you call are the witnesses for defense at the beginning. It's only later through that process you begin to interrogate yourself and begin to look at yourself in an honest mirror. So, my last thoughts in prison changed, but always I wanted to come out intact. And there was a stage when this right arm was paralyzed and I was living in a coma and I was nearing my release. And I was living on 20 milligrams, I'm trying to think of the drug. And Dr. Maharaj was in prison. And he said to me, hey Mac, they're making you a drug addict. I went to the prison doctor and I said, here's your collar, here's your medicine. He said, I can't do that, you signed an indemnity. I signed it. I went to another comrade who was in prison with me. He had trained in Umkhonto as an auxiliary medical officer. He's still alive, Ranka. I said, Ranka, you're going to massage me for my pain, and I'm going to exercise so that by the time I get free, I go back into battle. So when I came out, and I was house arrested in Durban, I went to a neurosurgeon and an orthopedic surgeon. They all examined me. They said, yes, I have a problem with my spine which had been damaged in torture in 1964. But they said, listen, you're in such good mental shape, we don't want to touch it. I've got 80% of the use of my arm back. And so there it was. So I tell this story because there is nothing in my life that I look back at and say, hey, I'm sorry. Even when I was smoking ganja and gave it up, I look back at it and said, you know, I learned something from it. I actually ran Marxist classes with some of the Gandhi-Mandela.
The fight for freedom spanned decades. Did at any point you doubt that we will overcome, or did you always know that the apartheid regime would be defeated?
That's an interesting question. I think that the regime made a mistake by putting us all political prisoners in the same prison. Because it created an environment where you never could drown yourself in self-pity. And in that environment, I don't think any of us doubted that our people would win freedom. But what I was always conscious of was that the choices I had made meant very likely that I would not live to see that freedom. And so, up to now, sometimes when my sleep breaks, I pinch myself. I say to myself, bloody hell, you're still alive. How damn lucky you are. So that's how it goes.
Given what you've just described, how did it then feel in 1994 when you were able to vote for the first time? We were talking earlier before, and you mentioned it was in Johannesburg. But what did you think at that particular moment as you made that cross?
I don't think anybody has ever stopped to describe or to ask some of us who were living at that time and active just how totally immersed we were. I was the Joint Secretary of the Transitional Executive Council at that time. Its task was to see that the government did not abuse its powers and tilt the playing field. We had no staff. So you were on duty all the time. And the night before the elections, the last sabotage bombs by the right wing went off at Joburg Airport. So all I had was the time to race over to the voting station, jump the queue, vote, and get back to duty. But how did I feel? You know, when I tried to make that X mark, I was so damn nervous. My hand was shaking because I was scared that I would spoil that ballot paper. It's the first time in my life that I was voting. And I wanted to make sure that my vote was casted correctly. And I was scared that I would spoil the paper. And when I finished voting and walked out, I was so relieved, but my focus shifted completely. I was now looking at the queue, and I voted in a elite white suburb. And I was so thrilled that in that queue, the whites were the minority because the domestic servants were the majority. And they ruled.
Mr. Maharaj, you served on Nelson Mandela's cabinet, 1994 to 1999. What was it about Nelson Mandela that you admired? What was it about him that you disliked?
I learned in prison that leadership is earned not by the words you use, but the actions you undertake. And I learned that from Mandela. I may have at times faulted on that score, but that I saw in action in prison from him. But I saw something else that I think has become the guiding light of my understanding of what makes a leader and how I try to live myself within myself. Mandela made the choice, together with his comrades, to go for the armed struggle. He was already in prison for 1 year when he was brought to the Rivonia trial as a result of the Rivonia arrest. And he found himself confronted with evidence of things that had happened while he was in prison, including the crafting of an operation called Operation Maibuya, which was now to move to guerrilla warfare. And it was a crazy plan. But he, as accused number one, said, I am going to take responsibility in this courtroom. He didn't say, why did you guys do this? Why did you decide that? Why did you do that? For the mistakes and the achievements, he took responsibility. And here they were facing the death sentence. And he said, I will defend what we have done, and I will defend our movement and our struggle. So he took responsibility for the consequences. And that meant he had to show a way forward. And the way forward that he showed was that if they sentenced us to death, we would not even appeal. Because we would rather die showing our people and being an inspiration to our people to say, keep fighting.
You raised the issue of the armed struggle. And in 2006, in a radio interview, you said, and I quote, you don't have to carry a gun to be a freedom fighter. Did this mark a change in the mindset from a man who joined the armed struggle to one who perhaps thought a little bit differently?
No change, no change. Taking to violence does not make you a freedom fighter. A freedom fighter is a person who stands up to a say in shaping the society in which they live. And you do that by activism, by mobilizing people, by talking to them, by getting them to act together to bring that change. And most of the instruments are instruments that are not rested on violence. I told you about Mandela. The first time we went to work in the quarry, because we were made to work in the quadrangle breaking stones, all we saw was a patch of blue sky surrounded by that quadrangle. We didn't see a blade of grass except when you were taken to see your visitor once in 6 months. So when they took us out to work at the lime quarry, we were walking in column, rows of 4 and in the column. And the warriors were on all sides of us, marching us, armed, shouting, wanting us to crouch and run, saying, ha! I was on the outer edge. And a whisper came through, saying, walk slowly. My muscles were trembling because the atmosphere was one of violence. And I was saying to myself, who the hell is saying walk slowly? And then I see Mandela working his way through the column, gently, until he's right in the front row. And there he began to slow down the whole column of us. And the warders kept on screaming. None of us answered back, but all of us just walked slowly. The warders were powerless. We didn't react by violence. We took to violence as an organized form of struggle because the system of apartheid and colonialism was based inherently on violence, and we took to violence to end that violence when it made it impossible for us to continue by peaceful means. We therefore took to violence in a situation where the combatant who put his finger on that trigger was armed with a vision of a society based on equality and a vision in which people were participants in making their life. So we took to arms to make peace.
To 25 years into democracy, that society that you dreamed about, that society that you fought for, has it been achieved?
Freedom has no end point. But we have achieved democracy so that all the differences, all the conflicts that arise in our society can be resolved by dialogue and through democratic processes. But we should never rest. We must make this democracy more and more participatory, because we should not allow people to feel alienated by the system, and we certainly must look at our 25 years history and acknowledge that one of the mistakes we have made is not to recognize that we come from a past where all of us, white and black, young and old, are traumatized. Because we had to live in a violent system. 10-year-olds in the townships were fighting police in Saracen tanks. The 10-year-olds were armed with sticks and stones. But so was the white traumatized. Because it is the white 18-year-old that had to go and fight in Angola for a cause he could not understand. And he came back a druggie, and he came back traumatized. We needed to acknowledge this. You saw us all, including Mandela, coming out of 27 years of prison. And you expected him to give 24 hours of his day to the community needs. You expected him to be intact and complete. You never stopped to ask what scars were there in his mind and in his heart. And so we've had to build this country, traumatized as we are. But we are paying the price for it today. Because with all the democracy that we enjoy, we find people mindlessly resorting to violence, destruction of property and life, without regard to the future, with only regard to what they perceive as a grievance today, which needs expression. That is why I took time to answer your question on violence. Violence has a place, but in a particular situation, but those who resort to it must take responsibility for its consequences and must know when to start and when to stop.
Just to move forward from that point, tell us about the book that has made the most impact on your life.
Pablo Neruda's memoirs. It's a poet from Chile. Gave his life to the struggle of Latin American people. Went through tremendous pains in his life and zigzags, and wrote a poem called The Water Song Ends, in which, and I can't remember the exact words, but the sentiment was that we've lived a life where we've been hurt and injured many times. But the injuries inflicted on you by your own comrades have been the most painful. And so he said, but nonetheless, we go on living love because we love life.
Do you think you've been hurt by your comrades?
Of course. Who hasn't? Do you think I was always right? And do you think the others who hurt me were always right? Do you think that the freedom struggle is a game of snookers, where the only injury is pain is the pain on the ball inflicted by the stick? No. The struggle is a serious business. Building society, making it better is a painful thing. And when you work to become a collective in a society that is inculcated in you the idea of putting your individual self on a pedestal, ignoring the fact that inherent in society are both the individual and the community, both competition and cooperation, and finding that balance, overcoming the mindset inculcated in you through a system based on discrimination and based on the exercise of power to gain more power. You will come up. We were born in the gutters of society to which apartheid had pushed us. And in those gutters we were covered with dirt and we had to get up and get together, stand together. And it is in that struggle that that dirt got washed off. And some of it still clings to your poles. And it is through your comrades that you get rid of it.
I'm just intrigued. Was the entire issue of power, and perhaps in your case, not wanting to be enmeshed in power, is what resulted in you choosing only to serve one term in cabinet, in the executive?
That was not the reason. I realized already in the first year in cabinet that we had now entered the era where you'd have to be a politician. That is a person who chooses politics as a career. That's not what I had chosen. I had chosen to be a freedom fighter. And there was an incident in cabinet. You talked about being injured by your comrades. There was an incident in cabinet where Mandela moved a proposal in the first meeting of cabinet. And he put me in charge of a subcommittee to make a study on a proposal. And when we produced that proposal after it had been costed and audited by a professional auditing company, I reported to cabinet. And the cabinet was made up of ANC, National Party, Duplicate Company, Buthelezi and his IFP. In front of that collective, I presented the report, and the first person to speak up was an ANC member, cabinet minister, who accused my report as being doctored and the figures being tailored to suit my solution. I was a heavy smoker. I walked out. I went to the veranda. I was smoking. Mandela came out and says, "Nef, what's happening?" I said, "You can see I'm in a mood." He said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "You see, Madiba, I'm not a politician. Forget that. I can't, in front of the IFP and the National Party, tell that comrade that he's talking nonsense." But I realized that's okay. That's okay, but it's not okay for me. So I'm not a politician. But when I retired, I went and told Madiba in the last year, "Madiba, I'm retiring." But I knew he was going to mess me up. So I had to put my reasons in a way that you can't answer that. So he did say, "Why?" I said, "Because I want to be with my family." He said, "Oh my God, that's a reason I can't challenge. If you give me any other reason, I'll deal with you."
As we approach the end stage of this interview, I want to talk about your family. And I want to talk about the sacrifices they made. And whether you think you've been a good dad.
No. I was never around. I was never around. It's only now, since 2000 and the end of 2008, when I left a job in the United States, and I returned and I said, "No," I said to my wife and to my daughter, "I'm taking your brother away, I'm going to go and look after him. You people start living your life." But by that time, he was already nearing his 30s. So I was never around for that. They too have had a good life. They've had their nappies changed in beds normally. They've had their nappy changed on the roadside. They've had nappy changed on a car bonnet. They've never had the nappy changed on a tar road in Zimbabwe. But they grew up in Zambia. They played with the gardener's neighbor's gardener's children. They first became aware of color when I was in Operation Buddha in the country. And when, as a result of accident, Zarina had to go and now live in the UK to be near medical service. And they went to an English school in Brighton. That's where they became aware of color. So that's a privileged life. But they've also had a painful life. My son, when I was in the country in Operation Buddha, the story was that the legend to mislead Pretoria was that I was dying, critically ill in the Soviet Union. But the house that my wife was renting because of her job was also the workplace of Operation Buddha and the communication center. So my son at 7 years old and 6 was hearing comrades talking, maybe using a code name for me, but worked out that hey, he's not in hospital, he's at home. And so when I was arrested, his mother said to him, calm down, be careful, don't worry, we're going to be seeing Dad. He said, Mom, it's not a question of when we'll see Dad, it's a question of whether we'll ever see Dad. So at 8 years, he knew that. But he said to me when we talked, he said, Dad, why did you lie to me? So I said, but son, I shouldn't give you that job as an 8-year-old. And he said, you mean you don't trust me? So my only answer was to say, but did you tell your sister? He said, no. I said, why didn't you tell your sister? He said, because I needed to protect her. So I said, it's okay for you to protect her, but not for me to protect you. This is the environment in which they grew up. That's not a good environment that we would wish for anybody. But it is an environment that challenged them, that made them never rest and say, I want to do something not just for myself. So, with all that, great suffering, plenty of sacrifice, plenty of reason to wallow in self-pity, but plenty of reason to look at the life as a challenge. Because that's what the journey of humankind is. We are by nature explorers. And the knowledge that we have accumulated from the origin of the human species is a journey of curiosity, of exploring, and of learning and finding ways and doing things that make society a better place.
If Mac Maharaj of today could go back in time and meet a 10-year-old Mac Maharaj, what would you say to your 10-year-old self? What advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
Say to him, son, the world is one of the most interesting places. There are things that you do not know and will see them as mysteries. But nothing in this world is unknowable. So be an explorer. Keep searching. Keep questioning. Keep looking for answers. But never when you have found an answer say, I found it, I know enough. Remain an explorer at heart.
I want to ask you one last question.
Are you going to keep your promise?
Yes, I will. If you had to leave this world with one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be?
You have to be two. Both of them based on the precept of Mandela, that we win our freedom in order to create freedom for others. That's an enormous responsibility. The second one is that in all the hardships and oppressive systems that you live in, the one thing that you have control over is your dignity. In the torture room, they can strip you naked without your permission. They can apply electric shocks to you without your permission. They can beat the hell out of you without your complicity. But the one thing they cannot rob you of without your complicity, is your dignity. That one, to rob you of that, you need to cooperate. That is something that we all must strive to understand. Because that, preserving your dignity, is what is going to make you a better person.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to tell you that we've been fortunate to be in the presence of a great man with great ideas, who's lived a great life and made a great contribution to our country. I thank you for your time, and Mr. Maharaj, thank you for all that you've done for us, and thank you, sir, for sharing this.
Your voice is loud enough.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maharaj and Akashji, for giving us a greater understanding of your life's journey through these historical series of events. And I call upon Consul General Mr. Anish Rajan to honor Mr. Maharaj and gift Akashji with a token of appreciation.
See, he's not a traditionalist. That's a man. I think I deserve this.
Both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. One another.
We express our sincere gratitude to Mr. Maharaj and Akashji for their participation in enhancing tonight's program. We thank Consul General Mr. Anish Rajan for gracing us with his presence, as well as to all you, our guests. To our service providers, Ms. Sariksha Naika of Cosmic Photography, Mr. Rajan Naidu of Extreme Sound Production, Little Gujarat for the scrumptious snacks provided, and once again to you all. We look forward for your suggestions, ideas, and feedback at the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India, Durban. Please do like our social media pages to stay tuned to what's happening next. Kindly please join us in the Consular Hall for refreshments. Namaskar, Shubh Rantri.